Lyra Moonwhisper stood in the grand hall of her family's mansion and felt her world crumble. The ancient walls that had protected her ancestors for over 1,000 years now seemed like a prison. Golden sunlight streamed through tall windows, but it could not warm the cold fear in her heart. "How much?" she asked, though she already knew the answer would destroy her. The reptilian woman across from her smiled, showing sharp teeth. Zara Keth was a Saurian, one of the galaxy's most successful traders. Her green scales gleamed under the light, and her yellow eyes held no mercy. 47 million credits, Zara said. Her voice was smooth like silk, but deadly like poison, plus interest. Your family owes the Saurian Commerce Guild more money than most planets make in a year. Lyra's hands shook. She was over 300 years old, but she had never felt so young and helpless. Her father had been a fool. He had invested everything in the exotic matter mines near the rim worlds. When the mines failed, the debt fell to her. "There must be another way," Lyra whispered. "My family has traded with yours for centuries. Surely we can arrange something." Zara walked around the room, her clawed feet clicking on the marble floor. She touched expensive vases and ancient books like she was already counting their worth. "Oh, there is another way," Zara said. "The old laws are very clear. When a debt cannot be paid, the debtor can offer service instead. But not to us. We have something else in mind." Lyra's heart sank deeper. In the old days, unpaid debts meant slavery. The thought of serving the Saurians made her sick. But what choice did she have? "I will do whatever is needed," Lyra said, trying to keep her voice steady. Zara laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You misunderstand, my dear elf. We don't want you to serve us. We want you to marry." "Marry?" Lyra stared at the alien woman. "Marry who?" "A human," Zara said simply. The words hit Lyra like a physical blow. She stepped backward, her face turning pale. "A human? You cannot be serious." "Very serious," Zara said. "His name is Jake Miller. He runs a colony called New Detroit in the Nexus sector. He needs a wife with connections to elvish technology. You need to clear your debt. Perfect match." Lyra felt dizzy. Humans were barely better than animals in elvish society. They lived such short lives, maybe 80 years if they were lucky. They had no magic, no culture, no honor. They were crude and violent and beneath her notice. "I cannot," Lyra said. "My family would never recover from such shame. Your family will not recover from bankruptcy either," Zara pointed out. "At least this way, you keep your mansion and your dignity. Well, most of it." Lyra walked to the window and looked out at the gardens her grandmother had planted. Everything she had ever known was here. The idea of leaving for some human colony made her stomach turn. "What kind of man is he?" she asked without turning around. "An engineer," Zara said. "He builds things, fixes problems. Very practical, these humans. He lost his first wife in a mining accident 2 years ago. Now he needs help running his colony and wants children who can use elvish magic." "He wants to use me," Lyra said bitterly. "Of course he does," Zara agreed. "Just like you will use him. Marriage contracts are business, not romance. You give him legitimacy and magical knowledge. He gives you protection and status. Your debt disappears." Lyra closed her eyes. The alternative was losing everything anyway, plus the shame of bankruptcy. At least this way, she could tell herself she was making a sacrifice for her family's honor. "How long?" she asked. "The contract runs for 10 standard years," Zara said. "After that, you can choose to stay or leave. But honestly, where would you go? Your own people will not welcome you back after you have been married to a human." The cruelty of it hit Lyra hard. This was not just a marriage contract. It was exile. Once she agreed, she could never truly come home again. "I need time to think," Lyra said. "You have until tomorrow," Zara replied. "After that, we start taking your property piece by piece, starting with this lovely mansion." That night, Lyra sat alone in her father's study. She looked through the financial records, hoping to find some mistake, some way out. But the numbers did not lie. Her family was ruined. She thought about Jake Miller. What kind of human man wanted an elvish wife? Was he desperate? Cruel? Did he know she was being forced into this? The next morning, Zara returned with a thick contract and a smile. "Have you decided?" the Saurian asked. Lyra looked around her home one last time. Then she picked up the pen. "I accept," she said quietly. The contract signing took place on Zara's ship 3 days later. The vessel was impressive, full of alien technology and luxury goods from across the galaxy. Lyra wore her finest dress, but it felt like funeral clothes. Jake Miller was already waiting when she arrived. He was taller than she expected, with brown hair and kind eyes. He wore simple clothes and looked nervous. When he saw her, he bowed politely. "Lady Moonwhisper," he said, "I am honored by this arrangement." His voice was gentle, not harsh, like she had imagined. But Lyra kept her face cold and proud. She would not show weakness to a human. "Mr. Miller," she replied with a formal nod. The ceremony was quick and legal, nothing more. Zara served as witness while a computer recorded their vows. Lyra spoke the words like she was reading a shopping list. Jake seemed to understand her feelings and did not try to make it romantic. When it was over, Zara raised a glass of expensive wine. "To new partnerships," she said with a grin. "May this arrangement profit everyone involved." Lyra drank the wine and tasted only bitterness. She was married now, bound to a human for the next 10 years. Her old life was over. But as she looked at Jake Miller, she noticed something strange. He did not look at her like she was a prize he had won. He looked worried, almost guilty, like he understood the cost of this arrangement for her. Maybe humans were not quite what she had expected. But it did not matter. She was trapped now, married, for a debt that was not even her own. Her only choice was to endure whatever came next. The journey to New Detroit took 5 days in Jake's small transport ship. Lyra spent most of the time in her cabin, trying not to think about what waited for her. She had expected Jake to bother her, to make demands or act like the crude human. She believed him to be. Instead, he left her alone and brought her meals without saying much. When the ship finally dropped out of hyperspace, Lyra looked out the window and gasped. New Detroit was not the dirty mining camp she had imagined. The colony spread across a green valley like a small city. Clean buildings rose from well-planned streets. Gardens and parks dotted the landscape. Ships came and went from a busy spaceport. "It is bigger than I thought," she said without meaning to. Jake was standing behind her, watching her reaction. "We have about 50,000 people now," he said. "Humans mostly, but also some Centaurians and even a few Saurians. Everyone is welcome if they work hard." Lyra tried to hide her surprise. In Elvish society, different species rarely mixed. Each group stayed with their own kind. But here, she could see humans and aliens working together in the streets below. Jake's house sat on a hill overlooking the colony. It was made of local stone and wood, simple but solid. When they landed, Lyra stepped out and breathed air that smelled of flowers and rain. The gravity was slightly lighter than her homeworld, making her feel like she might float away. "Welcome to New Detroit," Jake said quietly. "I hope you can be happy here." Lyra did not answer. She followed him into the house, expecting to find rough furniture and poor living conditions. Instead, she found something that confused her completely. The house was beautiful, not in the Elvish way, with delicate carvings and ancient art, but it was warm and comfortable and thoughtfully designed. Large windows let in natural light. The furniture was simple but well-made. Books filled the shelves and strange devices hummed quietly in corners. "What are those?" she asked, pointing at one of the devices. "Climate control," Jake explained. "It keeps the air fresh and the temperature steady. I built most of them myself." Lyra walked through the rooms, touching things carefully. Everything worked perfectly. The kitchen had gadgets that could cook meals in minutes. The bathroom had a shower that felt like standing in warm rain. Her bedroom had a bed that adjusted to her body and windows that could change from clear to dark with a touch. "You made all this?" she asked. Jake nodded. "I am an engineer. I like to build things that make life better." That evening, Jake cooked dinner while Lyra sat at the kitchen table and watched. She had never seen a man cook before. In Elvish society, that was servant work, but Jake moved around the kitchen like he enjoyed it. "Tell me about your colony," she said, surprising herself. She had planned to stay silent and cold. Jake smiled a little. We started 8 years ago with just 300 people. Most of us came from Earth colonies that were failing. We wanted to build something new, something better. Why here? The Nexus sector is neutral ground, Jake explained as he stirred something that smelled wonderful. No big government controls it. We can make our own rules, trade with anyone we want. But it is also dangerous. Pirates, raiders, political trouble. And you thought an elvish wife would help with that. Jake stopped stirring and looked at her. I thought an elvish wife might bring knowledge that could help us grow. Elvish technology is amazing. Your people understand energy and materials in ways we never could. You want to steal our secrets. I want to learn, Jake said simply. There is a difference. After dinner, Jake showed her around the colony. They walked down streets lit by soft lights that never flickered. Children played in parks while their parents sat and talked. Markets sold goods from across the galaxy. Everyone they met greeted Jake with respect and genuine warmth. Mayor Miller, called a woman with purple skin and 4 arms. Who is this lovely lady? My wife, Lyra, Jake said. Lyra, this is Dr. Vash. She runs our medical center. Dr. Vash bowed in the Centaurian style. Welcome, Lady Lyra. If you need anything, please ask. Jake is family to all of us. As they walked on, Lyra noticed something strange. People looked at Jake like they trusted him completely. Children ran up to him with scraped knees or lost toys. Adults stopped him to ask advice, or just to talk. He was not just their leader, he was their friend. They love you, she said. Jake looked embarrassed. They know I will not let them down. That is what leadership means here. You take care of people, and they take care of you. Over the next few days, Lyra tried to understand her new life. Jake gave her space, but was always ready to help if she asked. He showed her how the human devices worked and listened carefully when she explained elvish methods. He never acted like her knowledge was less important than his. But the differences between them seemed impossible to bridge. Jake thought in years and decades. Lyra thought in centuries. He made quick decisions and moved fast. She believed in careful planning and ancient wisdom. He trusted easily. She had learned to be suspicious of everyone. The worst moment came when raiders attacked a mining station 2 days away from the colony. Jake immediately called for volunteers to help with the rescue mission. Lyra watched from the town hall as dozens of people stepped forward, ready to risk their lives for strangers. This is madness, she said to Jake. Those miners are not your responsibility. They are human beings in danger, Jake replied. That makes them our responsibility. You will get your people killed for nothing. Maybe, Jake said. But we cannot live safe and happy while others suffer. That is not who we want to be. Lyra stared at him. The elvish way was simple. Protect your own people first, always. Let others solve their own problems. It was practical and smart. But watching Jake prepare for a dangerous rescue mission, she felt something she had never experienced before. Shame. Not because Jake was wrong, but because she was starting to think he might be right. That night, she sat alone in her room and tried to understand what was happening to her. This human she had married was nothing like what she had expected. He was kind without being weak, smart without being arrogant. He led without demanding. He built things that lasted even though his own life was so short. Maybe humans were not the crude animals she had always believed them to be. Maybe they were something else entirely. Something that might be worth understanding. The thought scared her more than anything else that had happened since she left home. Because if she was wrong about humans, what else might she be wrong about? Outside, her window, she could see the lights of New Detroit stretching into the darkness. 50,000 people sleeping safely because a human named Jake Miller cared more about doing right than staying safe. For the first time since her marriage, Lyra found herself curious about what tomorrow might bring. The rescue mission went wrong from the start. Jake and his team reached the mining station just as the raiders launched their second attack. What should have been a simple evacuation turned into a deadly trap. The miners were pinned down in the deep tunnels while enemy ships circled overhead like hungry wolves. Lyra watched the reports come in from the colony's communications center. Each message brought worse news. The rescue ships were damaged. Half the team was wounded. Jake and 20 others were trapped underground with no way out. "We should send more ships," said Commander Brooks, the colony's military leader. "With what?" replied Mayor Chen. "The raiders have destroyers up there. Our transport ships would be torn apart." "So we abandon them." Dr. Vash slammed her 4 hands on the table. "Jake would never abandon us." "Jake made his choice," said Councilman, Hart coldly. "We cannot risk the whole colony for 20 people." Lyra listened to the argument and felt sick. These people loved Jake, but they were going to let him die. It was the practical choice, the smart choice, the elvish choice, but something inside her rebelled against it. "There might be another way," she said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. She had barely spoken in council meetings before. To them, she was just Jake's strange foreign wife. "What do you mean?" asked Dr. Vash. Lyra took a deep breath. "Elvish ships have cloaking technology. If I could get close enough to the mining station without being seen—" "You are not a pilot," Commander Brooks said. "No," Lyra agreed, "but I know elvish magic. I could hide a ship long enough to reach them." "Too dangerous," Mayor Chen said. "We cannot risk losing you too." Lyra almost laughed. A week ago she would have agreed, but now, thinking of Jake trapped in those tunnels, the risk seemed worth taking. "It is my choice," she said. 3 hours later, Lyra sat in the pilot's seat of Jake's personal shuttle, her hands glowing with soft blue light. Around the ship, space bent and twisted as her magic wrapped them in illusion. To the raider ships, they would look like just another piece of floating debris. "This is incredible," whispered Lieutenant Torres, the young pilot beside her. "How do you do it?" "Practice," Lyra said through gritted teeth. The spell took enormous concentration. "And about 300 years of study." They slipped past the raider blockade like a ghost. Lyra felt sweat running down her face as she held the illusion steady. One mistake, and they would all die. The mining station was a wreck. Smoke poured from broken sections, and emergency lights flashed in the darkness. Torres guided them to a service dock while Lyra kept them hidden. "How long can you hold this?" Torres asked. "Long enough," Lyra hoped. They found Jake and his team 3 levels down, defending a group of injured miners from raider soldiers who had breached the station. The narrow corridors echoed with gunfire and shouting. Jake was bleeding from a head wound, but he kept giving orders and encouraging his people. "We need to get to the surface," he told his team. "The evacuation ship will not wait forever." "Sir," said Sergeant Kim, "half these miners cannot walk. How do we carry them?" Jake looked around at the wounded people depending on him. Lyra could see him doing the terrible math in his head. How many could they save? How many would they have to leave behind? "We take everyone," he said finally. "We find a way." "That is impossible," Kim protested. "Then we make it possible," Jake replied. "That is what humans do." Watching him in that moment, Lyra finally understood something important. Humans did not live long lives like elves. They did not have centuries to plan and prepare. So when they found something worth fighting for, they gave everything they had, right now, without holding back. It was not reckless. It was brave. Lyra made her decision. She stepped out of hiding and let her magic blaze like a star. Light filled the corridor, and the raider soldiers stumbled backward, temporarily blinded. "Lyra?" Jake stared at her in shock. "What are you doing here?" "Getting you out," she said simply. With her magic clearing the path, they managed to move all the wounded miners to the surface. Lyra held the cloaking spell around their ship while Torres loaded everyone aboard. It was the longest 20 minutes of her life. As they lifted off, Jake collapsed into a seat beside her. His face was pale from blood loss, but he was smiling. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You did not have to come." "Yes, I did," Lyra replied. During the flight back to New Detroit, Lyra sat with Jake in the medical bay while Dr. Vash treated his wounds. The rescued miners filled the passenger compartment, alive because he had refused to leave anyone behind. "Why did you do it?" she asked him. "Risk everything for people you barely knew?" Jake was quiet for a long time. "My first wife, Maria, used to ask me the same question," he said finally. "I told her it was because someone has to care. If we only help our own people, if we only do what is safe and easy, Then what kind of people are we? Alive people, Lyra said. Maybe, Jake agreed, but not the kind of people worth being alive. His words hit her like a physical blow. All her life she had been taught that survival came first. Take care of your own family, your own species, your own interests. Everything else was someone else's problem. But watching Jake nearly die for strangers made her realize something terrible. Maybe the elvish way was not wisdom. Maybe it was just fear. When they reached New Detroit, the whole colony came out to welcome them home. People cheered and cried and hugged each other. Children ran up to Jake with flowers. The rescued miners were treated like family. And in the middle of it all, Zara Keth was waiting. The Saurian trader had arrived while they were gone, and she watched the celebration with great interest. When she saw Lyra, her yellow eyes gleamed with amusement. Well, well, Zara said. The Ice Princess has learned to care about humans. How interesting. I did what needed to be done, Lyra said stiffly. Oh, my dear elf, Zara laughed. You did much more than that. You chose them over your own safety. That is not duty. That is love. Lyra felt her cheeks burn. I do not love him. Perhaps not yet, Zara agreed. But you are starting to respect him. And respect is where love begins. That night, Lyra sat in her garden and thought about everything that had happened. A week ago, she would have called Jake's rescue mission foolish. Now she found herself proud to have been part of it. Humans were still strange to her. They lived fast and died young and made decisions based on feelings instead of logic. But maybe that was not weakness. Maybe it was strength. Maybe there were worse things than being married to someone who would risk everything to save strangers. Maybe she was starting to understand what humans really were. And maybe that scared her more than anything else. 3 months after the rescue mission, everything changed again. The news came through the emergency channels while Lyra was working in her garden. Jake found her there, his face grave with worry. We have a problem, he said. A big one. In the town hall, the council watched as Admiral Kane of the Hegemony Fleet appeared on the main screen. He was a tall man with cold eyes and perfect military bearing. Behind him stood the flags of 12 different species, all united under Hegemony rule. Citizens of New Detroit, Kane said in a voice like steel. You have 3 days to surrender your colony and evacuate all human residents from the Nexus sector. The Hegemony Council has voted. Humanity is a threat to galactic stability and must be contained. Contained how? Jake asked. Though Lyra could see he already knew the answer. All human colonies outside Earth space will be dismantled, Kane continued. Human citizens will be relocated to supervised worlds where they can be properly monitored. This is not negotiable. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in shocked silence. How many ships do they have? Asked Commander Brooks. 47, said Dr. Vash, reading from her scanner. Including 3 battle cruisers. We have 12 patrol boats and a mining platform. We cannot fight them, Mayor Chen said flatly. We have to evacuate. No, Jake said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. Jake, Dr. Vash said gently. This is not like the Raiders. The Hegemony has the backing of most of the galaxy. If we resist, they will destroy us. Then we get destroyed, Jake replied. But we do not run. Lyra stared at him. You would rather die than leave? I would rather die than let them win, Jake said. New Detroit is not just a colony. It is proof that different species can live together in peace. If we surrender, that proof dies with us. The argument went on for hours. Some council members wanted to negotiate. Others wanted to evacuate immediately. A few supported Jake's plan to resist. But in the end, it came down to a simple vote. Stay and fight, or run and live. The vote was close. 7 to stay, 5 to leave. That night, Lyra walked the streets of New Detroit and saw people preparing for war. Families loaded children onto ships bound for safe worlds. Others stayed to help with the defense. No one was forced to choose. Everyone decided for themselves. She found Zara at the spaceport, loading supplies onto her trading vessel. You are leaving? Lyra asked. My ship. My choice, Zara replied. But I am not running away. I am going to collect some friends. Friends? Zara's eyes gleamed. Did you think I arranged your marriage just to clear a debt? Oh, my dear elf, I have much bigger plans than that. Before Lyra could ask what she meant, Zara was gone, her ship disappearing into hyperspace. The next day brought another shock. A message arrived from the Elvish Dominion, addressed to Lyra personally. She read it alone in her room, her hands shaking. The message was from her cousin, Lord Silvermoon, speaking for the Dominion Council. Lyra, he said through the recording, we have heard of your situation. If you come home now, we will forgive your marriage to the human. You can have your old life back, your title, your wealth, everything. The offer was everything she had. Wanted 3 months ago, freedom from her marriage contract, an end to her exile, a return to the life she had always known. All she had to do was abandon Jake and his people. Lyra sat in the growing darkness and thought about her choices. The smart choice was obvious. The hegemony would win. New Detroit would be destroyed. Everyone here would die or be scattered across the galaxy. But as she thought about leaving, she realized something that shocked her. She did not want to go. Somewhere, in the past few months, this strange human colony had become home. These people had become her people. And Jake? Jake had become more than just the man she was contracted to marry. The next morning, she found him on the communications deck, trying to coordinate the colony's defenses. He looked tired and worried, but determined. I got a message. From my people, she told him. They want me to come home. Jake stopped what he was doing and looked at her. For a moment, his careful control slipped, and she saw fear in his eyes. Not fear of the hegemony, but fear of losing her. Will you go? He asked quietly. I should, Lyra said. It would be the smart thing to do. Yes, Jake agreed. It would be. But I'm not going to. Jake stared at her. Why not? Lyra took a deep breath. Because 3 months ago you asked me what kind of people we want to be. I think I finally know the answer. That afternoon she sent her reply to the Dominion Council. It was short and clear. She was staying with her husband and his people. She renounced her Elvish title and declared herself a citizen of New Detroit. The response came back within hours. She was cast out from Elvish society forever. Her name would be removed from all family records. She was dead to her people. Jake found her crying in their garden that evening. You gave up everything for us, he said softly. No, Lyra replied, wiping her eyes. I gave up everything for you. He sat beside her on the stone bench, not touching, but close enough that she could feel his warmth. I am sorry, he said. I know what your family meant to you. They meant everything to me, Lyra admitted. But that was before I learned what love really means. Jake turned to look at her, surprise clear on his face. I love you, she said simply. Not because of our contract, not because I have to. I love you because you are the best man I have ever known. And I would rather die fighting beside you than live safely without you. For a long moment, they sat in silence. Then Jake reached over and took her hand. I love you too, he said. I have for weeks. I just did not think that an elvish princess could love a human engineer, that anyone could love someone knowing it would probably end in 3 days. Lyra laughed, surprising herself. Then you do not understand love very well. Love is not about having forever. Love is about making every moment count. The next day, Zara returned with the most beautiful sight Lyra had ever seen. 50 ships from 20 different species, all coming to help defend New Detroit. I told you I had bigger plans, Zara said with a grin. The hegemony thinks they speak for everyone. Time to show them how wrong they are. As the combined fleet took position around the colony, Lyra stood with Jake on the observation deck and watched their friends prepare for battle. Whatever happens, Jake said, I want you to know that marrying you was the best thing that ever happened to me, even though it might get us both killed. Especially because of that, Jake replied. You chose to stay when you could have run. That means more to me than anything else ever could. The hegemony fleet arrived right on schedule, massive and terrible, and confident of victory. But as Admiral Kane prepared to demand surrender, he found something he had not expected, a united force of species that refused to back down. The Battle of New Detroit was about to begin. And for the first time since her marriage, Lyra felt truly free. The Battle of New Detroit lasted 18 hours and changed the galaxy forever. Admiral Kane had expected an easy victory over a small human colony. Instead, he found himself facing a fleet of 50 ships from 20 different species, all working together with impossible coordination. At the center of it all, Jake Miller commanded the defense like he was conducting a symphony. Lyra fought beside him on the command deck, her elvish magic enhancing their sensors and communications. She could feel the flow of battle like a living thing, seeing patterns that human technology could not detect. When she shared what she saw with Jake, he turned those patterns into tactical advantages. "Hegemony Squadron moving to attack Vector 7, she said, her eyes glowing with magical sight. "Torres, take your wing around the moon," Jake ordered immediately. "Hit them from behind when they commit to their attack run." "Roger that, Command," came the reply. Zara commanded her own squadron of trading vessels that had been converted into fast attack ships. Her voice crackled over the communications as she led them through the enemy formation like a pack of wolves. "Saurian Wing, this is Zara. Those big cruisers look scary, but they turn like pregnant whales. Stay fast, stay smart, make them angry." The battle turned when Admiral Kane made a critical mistake. Frustrated by the unexpected resistance, he ordered his ships to target the colony directly. It was meant to force a surrender, but it had the opposite effect. Every ship in the combined fleet, even those that had been ready to retreat, suddenly fought with desperate fury. They were not just defending territory anymore. They were defending their friends, their families, their future. Jake's voice echoed across all channels. "All ships, this is New Detroit Command. They want to destroy what we have built together. Show them what we are willing to do to protect it." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Species that had been enemies for centuries fought side by side. Centaurian medical ships risked everything to rescue wounded Saurian pilots. Human engineers worked frantically to repair elvish cruisers. A hegemony destroyer found itself surrounded by 6 different types of ships, all demanding its surrender. Admiral Kane's formation began to break apart. His captains had trained to fight enemies, not a family defending its home. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "we are taking heavy losses. Should we withdraw?" Kane stared at the tactical display, watching his careful plans fall apart. "How are they doing this? It should be impossible to coordinate this many different species." On New Detroit's command deck, Lyra smiled as she felt the answer flowing through her magic. "They fight as one because they choose to be one," she told Jake. "The hegemony uses fear to control their ships. We use love to connect ours." The turning point came when 3 hegemony cruisers broke formation to attack a damaged hospital ship. Jake immediately moved to intercept, even though it meant leaving the colony exposed. "Sir," Commander Brooks warned, "if we move our ships, they could attack the planet directly." "Then we trust our friends to stop them," Jake replied. He was right to trust them. As Jake's ships raced to save the hospital ship, Zara's trading fleet and 2 squadrons of Centaurian fighters moved to cover the colony. When the hegemony tried to exploit the opening, they found it was not an opening at all. It was a trap. The battle ended when Admiral Kane's flagship took critical damage and began to drift helplessly. Jake could have destroyed it, but instead he offered rescue to the crew. "This is Admiral Kane to all hegemony vessels," came the transmission. "Withdraw immediately. The operation is terminated." As the hegemony fleet limped away, the combined defenders gathered around New Detroit like a protective shell. Ships that had arrived as strangers now moved together like they had been allies for years. "Well," Zara said over the general channel, "that was fun. Anyone want to make this arrangement permanent?" The celebration lasted 3 days. Representatives from dozens of species came to New Detroit to sign the treaty that would become known as the Nexus Alliance. For the first time in galactic history, a coalition based on choice rather than conquest had defeated a major military power. Lyra found Jake on the balcony of their home, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. The sounds of celebration drifted up from the town below, where humans and aliens danced together in the streets. "Any regrets?" he asked as she joined him. "About which part?" Lyra replied. "Giving up my title, leaving my people, marrying a stubborn human who thinks he can fight the whole galaxy?" "Any of it. All of it." Lyra thought about the question seriously. 6 months ago, she had been a wealthy elvish noble with a secure future and ancient family name. Now she was a refugee from her own people, married to a man from a species her culture despised, living on a colony that had just made enemies of half the galaxy. "No," she said finally. "No regrets at all." Jake smiled and put his arm around her. "Good. Because I have a confession to make." "Oh? I never really needed an elvish wife for the technology," he said. "I mean, it helps. But that was not the real reason." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "Then why?" "Because Zara told me about you," Jake admitted. "She said you were brilliant and strong and trapped in a life that was too small for you. She thought we might understand each other." "Zara planned this whole thing?" "I think she planned more than just our marriage," Jake said, gesturing toward the ships filling the sky around them. "I think she planned a revolution." As if summoned by her name, Zara appeared on their balcony with 2 bottles of expensive wine and a satisfied grin. "Did someone mention my name?" she asked. "I hope you were saying nice things." "We were discussing your matchmaking skills," Lyra said dryly. "Oh, that," Zara waved dismissively. "The marriage was just the beginning. You two were proof that different. Species could not just coexist, but thrive together. Once people saw that, the rest was inevitable." "You used us," Jake said, but he was smiling. "I gave you what you both needed," Zara corrected. Jake needed someone who could challenge him to be more than just a good leader. Lyra needed someone who could show her that love was worth more than safety. You needed each other. Lyra had to admit the Saurian was right. In trying to solve their individual problems, they had found something neither of them had been looking for, a partnership that made them both stronger. "So what happens now?" Lyra asked. "Now we build something new," Jake said. "A place where species work together because they want to, not because they have to. A place where marriage contracts can become real love, where strangers can become family, where anyone can find a home." "The hegemony will not give up," Zara warned. "They will be back with more ships, more allies, more threats." "Then we will be ready," Lyra said simply. "All of us together." A year later, Lyra stood in the same garden where she had first cried over her lost family, but she was not crying now. She was laughing as Jake chased their 6-month-old daughter around the flower beds. Little Maria had elvish ears and human curiosity, magic in her fingertips, and stubbornness in her heart. She was the first child born of the Nexus Alliance, a symbol of what the galaxy could become. "She is going to be trouble," Zara observed from her favorite chair. The Saurian had become a permanent resident of New Detroit, claiming retirement but somehow always involved in important business. "The best kind of trouble," Lyra agreed. The debt that had brought her to New Detroit was long forgotten. But Lyra had learned that some debts could never be repaid, only honored. She owed Jake for showing her what love really meant. She owed Zara for seeing possibilities she had never imagined. She owed New Detroit for giving her a home where she could be herself. Most of all, she owed the galaxy a debt of hope. Hope that differences could become strengths, that strangers could become family, that love could overcome fear. It was a debt she was happy to spend the rest of her life paying. As the 3 moons of New Detroit rose over the colony, Lyra Miller smiled and prepared for whatever tomorrow might bring. She had learned that humans were right about one thing. Life was too short to waste on fear. Even if you lived for 1,000 years, there was always time to choose love over safety, hope over despair, and family over everything else. And that choice, she had discovered, made all the difference in the galaxy.